Hi, my name is Dr. Anthony Barali. I'm on the board of the Ketamine Assisted Therapy Association of Canada, and I'm a consultant psychiatrist in psychiatry on the Sunshine Coast, BC. I've worked extensively in anesthesia and emergency medicine, both here in Canada and in South Africa before that. I developed one of the first hospital-based treatment programs for treatment-resistant depression using intravenous ketamine. I've treated over 36 patients and seen a direct benefit. With a response rate of 70%, there's a potential for transformative improvement in both mood and functioning. Beyond the obvious neuroplastic improvements in the brain, there is the critical dissociative experience which allows the patient to see themselves, their trauma and their past in a new, non-distorted way. Having used ketamine for years, I'm aware of its safety concerns. But in the right hands, with the right training, there is no major concern for this medication use. At Cato Canada, we look forward to having discussions with you as we move forward to developing recommendations for safe use and equal access to ketamine.
Happy World Psychedelics Day. My name is Corey Firth, and I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Psychedelic Association. We're a non-profit organization focused on uniting the psychedelic community from coast to coast and a proud sponsor of World Psychedelics Day. As Canada's voice in psychedelics, we build systems, empower people, and mobilize groups to expand education, increase harm reduction, and advocate for policy reform in order to create far-reaching access to psychedelic therapies across the country. We just launched our online private community where folks from every walk of life are interacting, sharing stories, and talking about next steps within the space here in Canada and abroad, and we would love to have you join us. For $100 a year, you get access to our free live events like the one we just posted with Dr. Gabor Mate, discounts on training and public conferences, and inclusive access to our private networking community where you can connect with like-minded psychedelic supporters from all across Canada. To join the CPA and find your psychedelic community, visit joincpa.ca today. Happy World Psychedelics Day, everyone.
Welcome, everyone, to the World Psychedelics Day. We're so honored to have you here. My name is Salome Tabrizi. I'm a clinical counselor and a plant medicine facilitator. I predominantly work with ayahuasca and mushrooms, but cannabis has a very special place in my heart. I'm very excited about today's conversation. I'm also one of the founding members of the Canadian Psychedelic Association, which is the unified voice for psychedelics in Canada, working on many different streams, as well as work in decriminalization, ethics, policy, education, and advancements of these incredible medicines. I have also been the founder and the director of the Cannabis Hemp Conference, which went from 2015 to 2018 when Canada legalized cannabis. And again, very, very excited about our deep dive conversation today. I would like to introduce our esteemed guest today with us on the panel of cannabis, what you need to know in regards to cannabinoids and endocannabinoids. Before we move on, I would like to also thank the International Psychedelics Awareness Foundation for putting on this event. The International Psychedelics Awareness Foundation is a nonprofit organization welcoming collaborators and allies upholding the values of sustainability, accessibility, diversity, and inclusivity. Any funds raised from this event, which is offered free to the public on this day of June 20th, will offset the cost of production. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Natalia Kogan, who is joining us from Israel.
Hi.
Hello, Dr. Kogan. A little bit about Dr. Kogan. She was born in Ukraine and immigrated to Israel in 1995. She has earned a Bachelor's of Pharmacy and a Master's of Science degree from the Hebrew University School of Pharmacy, and she has graduated with excellence. She has received numerous high-profile awards in her field. Working under the supervision of the legendary Professor Raphael Mechoulam, who is a hero to many of us in the cannabis field and is currently 90 years old. She has worked diligently on developing new compounds, including cannabinoids, and these have demonstrated anti-cancer potential. So we'll hear a little bit more about those advancements. And Dr. Kogan, thank you again so much for joining us on the launch of World Psychedelics Day.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So first and foremost, what inspired you personally to start your journey with cannabis? And more specifically, what interested you in studying cannabis on a molecular level?
During my BSc is pharmacy, so when I imagined myself as a pharmacist at the beginning, I thought about growing in herbs and potions making, whatever. And then I had Rafi's course of medicinal, Professor Mechoulam's course of medicinal herbs, and it was just incredible. So I wanted to dive more into it, into turning this ancient, nearly scientific stuff into the real molecules and mechanisms, and knowing everything and influencing it, changing it now, because we now less work with the herb itself. We synthesize the better versions of the molecules, which is called structure-activity relationship. So we can add here or there and improve molecules activity or stability or solubility, whatever. So and sometimes you get totally different activities when you change not that much in the molecule. So we play with all this organic chemistry, synthetic chemistry all the time to get different molecules and all the activities.
Excellent. Yes. And I can imagine, you stand upon the shoulders of greats because Israel has been at the forefront of advancement of research and the medicalization of cannabis, especially during a time when even in Canada and US it was still prohibited. Dr. Mechoulam and his team were really pushing the edge of scientific research for cannabis. Tell us a little bit more about what has been discovered in Dr. Mechoulam's lab and what the current projects are that you're excited about.
Well, the most known thing that was discovered in his lab is the structure of THC, and it was far ago, before I even was born in 1967. Most of the compounds were discovered by him, and then they started to look for which one of them is the active compound, and in those times they meant the psychoactive compound, because this was considered the activity, and this is how they found the THC, and but also many minor cannabinoids which now gain attention, which were neglected for many years, but now suddenly everyone talks about cannabidiol and cannabigerol, cannabichromen, and all these molecules that were discovered by him back in 60s. And it was surely really exciting. They didn't even know to which receptors they bind. They did studies in mice to know which one is psychoactive, and there is a set of animal studies which prove which one of the molecules is psychoactive. And after that, of course, the cannabinoid receptors were found, and the endocannabinoid system, which is the total world of itself, because there are so many of them and their actions are so diverse. So there's never boring in cannabinoid field. Every time something interesting is happening, that's why I continue with this for more than 20 years now, because it's just such an interesting area.
That's wonderful. Yes, as you mentioned, the discovery of an isolation of THC in Dr. Macholam's lab was a massive step forward in understanding this plant that for many, many years, again, you mentioned it being an ancient plant, but for many years, because of prohibition, it was not really understood. And I still feel that we are at the tip of the iceberg in regards to this medicine. And so with the discovery and isolation of THC, then as you mentioned, the understanding of the receptors, so the CB1 receptor in 1992 with Dr. Lumir Hanous and Dr. William Devane, and understanding that our body is actually parallel to this plant in regards to what we have as far as our own cannabinoids within our own body. So the discovery of the endocannabinoid system, and of course the first endocannabinoid being anandamide that was discovered in 1992. Now, can you share a little bit more about why this is important? So our body really matches this incredible plant because the cannabis plant has, more than 100 phytocannabinoids, and we have our own cannabinoids within our own system. So can you talk a little bit about the synergy of the plant with our body and why it's so important to understand this for cancer, autoimmune issues, inflammation, sleep, mental health issues regarding anxiety and depression? Why are these discoveries and the matching of the plant so important for us?
I think that we'll divide this into two. First, an understanding of endocannabinoid system is really important, because this way we understand how our body works and how we can improve it, because now we can not only work with plant cannabinoids, but the molecules which are not cannabinoids at all, but they influence the system of endocannabinoids. For example, they inhibit the metabolizing enzymes. For example, it was found that cannabidiol can inhibit fatty acid amine hydrolase, an enzyme that metabolizes anandamide. So it looks as if, and it really is so, cannabidiol does not activate CB1 by itself, but it can help a bit because it inhibits the enzyme which decomposes anandamide, so we have more anandamide in the body. It's sort of, there are many other medicines which do it, which enhance the amount of neurotransmitters in the body. For example, SSRI is the most known, which enhances the amount of serotonin in the synapse and so on. So it is both therapeutic and diagnostic. If you will find that in some illness, the endocannabinoid system is up or down, or not the whole system, the balance between different endocannabinoids, there is more anandamide and less 2AG, or as I said, endocannabinoids are the whole world. So we now, for now, we call endocannabinoids like anandamide, 2AG, and like only 2-3 others. But it's a bit old definition, because we define as endocannabinoid molecules that bind to cannabinoid receptors, either CB1 or CB2. But now we already know that there are much more than these two receptors. Cannabinoids were also found to bind GPR55 and GPR18 and GPR119 and TRPV channels, PPRI, gamma, whatever. So there are so many targets that now almost every so-called endocannabinoid-like molecules, because how do endocannabinoids look? There is a fatty acid chain combined to either ethanolamine or glycerol or amino acids. So there could be loads of combinations, because when we talk on anandamide and 2-arachidonylglycerol, we only talk about arachidonic acid, right? But there are other cannabinoids which are not officially cannabinoids for now, but they are like endocannabinoid-like molecules, like oleoyl serine or oleoyl glycine, which we will also work on, and they have very important activities. So we both work to find novel endocannabinoids which were not found till now, and work to see how the endocannabinoid-like molecules change in different diseases. So to maybe hopefully find some diagnostic tools. And if we will know that in some disease we have less of some endocannabinoid, we probably, possibly will be able to treat it, but aiding from outside synthetic cannabinoids, which will bind the same receptors. So this is how it goes, more or less.
Yes, it's fascinating. Like you're talking about the combination and which, endocannabinoids are binding to different ones. And I love that you're saying that, based on just looking at the disease that's apparent in someone's body, what cannabinoids are missing, then working backwards in introducing the cannabinoids through either phytocannabinoids or synthetic ways to be able to create that equilibrium within someone's body. Because we now know that cannabis supports sleep, mood, appetite. It's really the basics of human functioning and balance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, even it seems really the endocannabinoid system seems to be the total protective system. I don't know how even to define it. And there are papers now that different alternative practices. Suddenly I saw a paper that if you do acupuncture in the point of the needle, anandamide and 2-EG are elevated. For example, suddenly you wouldn't expect it, but so all this is so coolly interlinked one with another. And the studies on plant cannabinoids also, you can see also only on CBD, only on cannabidiol, which is even not psychoactive. So even everyone who is doesn't really want the psychoactive effect on him, want just to, wake up, take his medicine and go for work with his clear head without any high, can treat himself with cannabidiol from so many diseases, approved by clinical trials, official medical clinical trials, not some strange practices, but something really proved by evidence-based medicine. It's really incredible.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for that, because it was, just looking at the plant and how there are over 100 cannabinoids that are discovered now. Of course, we know THC. There's much more understanding about cannabidiol, CBD, for like what you're saying, for its health benefits and not being psychoactive. So THC being predominantly psychoactive, CBD not being psychoactive, but still having the health benefits for anti-inflammation, for epilepsy, for ways to just again bring the body back to that balance. And I appreciate you sharing that there are alternative ways. So the Eastern and the Western medicines are really coming together, where acupuncture can actually increase some of the endocannabinoids within our system. Can you talk a little bit more about, again, through my understanding, I know that CB1 receptors are mostly in the brain and in the nervous system, and in CB2 receptors are more in the periphery of the organs and deal with the immune system of the body. And your work is specifically looking at anti-cancer. So can you share more about what you're discovering and how it relates to these two receptors and possibly more?
Actually, my work wasn't linked to neither CB1 nor CB2 because I started from CBD, which by itself hardly binds any of them. It's a beta allosteric inhibitor of CB1, but not so much. And CBD has very many mechanisms and it's not so defined. At some point, there are, for example, studies where you don't know how it works, but if you put serotonin inhibitor, it stops CBD's work. Although CBD by itself doesn't bind serotonin receptors even. So it's really many things to study yet with the CBD, how it works. So I started from the unknown, from CBD, and added some feature which is called quinone ring, which is an anti-cancer moiety, which is present in doxorubicin and many anti-cancer drugs. In an attempt to combine the anti-cancer activity of this quinonoid moiety and the cannabinoid activity, which is distributing nicely through the body and crossing the blood-brain barrier, and because most of the quinonoid drugs are water soluble and the cannabinoids are totally different in their physical properties. So these molecules were found to be anti-cancer through topoisomerase inhibition. Topoisomerase is an enzyme inside our nucleus in each cell. DNA inside the cells, DNA has a very long chain, so to be inside the cell nucleus, it has to be very tightly supercoiled. And when we have to replicate cells, it has to be uncoiled. So topoisomerase is that enzyme that uncoils it and makes it the replication possible. So this is the enzyme which is inhibited by the molecules I've synthesized. And I saw that after I did it, other groups did another modification. That's the wonder of the science, that another group took it and did some modifications that now their molecules work not on topoisomerase but on PPAR gamma and are anti-inflammatory and are even close in clinical trials. So we are now went back and said, okay, so they improved our molecules. Now let's see how we can improve further. And so it's layer on layer on layer of science of improving here and there, and hopefully getting into clinic someday with these molecules. Let's see.
Let's see. Yes. Well, it's fascinating, as you said, to really look at what's happening on the molecular level in the body, especially in the nucleus level, and what combinations are helping that, and what just the small shifts can create the different kind of effects in the system. Now, with quinonoids that you mentioned, and combining it with CBD, is there, as you said, the layers of science are building. So what's next for you? What are you most excited about? And potentially, where are the streams of cannabis research going that maybe not just with this realm, but are more fascinating for you and you're most excited about?
Let's say this project of quinones is moving forwards with improving the structures, and hopefully will once be an anti-cancer drug, maybe. What we are really excited about is finding novel endocannabinoids and continuing with these lines of endocannabinoids, because I think that there is loads to discover there. Because let's say if you take cannabis, THC, and now also CBD are very, very researched already. And it's really good that now they're in many clinical trials, and I look for it to continue more and more, and to prove people that it works, and which exact doses work, and all that strains that we haven't talked about it, but even we thought in our experiments that pure CBD, for example, works worse than combined with terpenes and everything, so-called entourage effect, that if you take the whole herb preparation, it works usually better than the purified only CBD or only THC, which is also very interesting where this research will take, because from one side, everyone understands that you will not be able to standardize each one of these small helping molecules, because even now the growers who grow and have to standardize THC and CBD, only in Israel, the regulation, for example, is only THC and CBD are standardized. Like they sell preparations that are, let's say, CBD-rich extract has to be 28% CBD, 1% THC. So, and even this is quite hard for them, because anyway, it's agriculture. So this grows like it, as much as you can try. Anyway, this is herb. So I can't imagine how we will be able to quantify and to standardize all the terpenoids and flavonoids and minor cannabinoids like CBC and CBG and CBN and all of these. From the other side, it really is important. These compositions, this is what makes people to say that one strain helps them better than another, although they have the same amount of CBD. So this will be really interesting to see where it will go, this side of research. And of course, minor cannabinoids. I remember times that almost no one talked about CBD. Everyone worked on THC. Now CBD is very popular. So now it's a turn of CBG, CBC. Let's see what minor cannabinoids will show. And with all the genetic achievements now, probably it is possible to grow a CBC-rich strain, or I don't know. So we will see also very interesting new strains at the moment that someone will find out really good activities of minor cannabinoids. I suppose that growers will run to do genetic modifications to produce the strains rich in those cannabinoids. So
yes, very.
So it is never boring in cannabinoids.
Yes, I can really feel that. And once people start to understand the richness of and the complexity of this plant, I think there's an excitement that builds up. And I really appreciate you speaking about the entourage effect. This is something that many people also don't understand. They say, well, this person is dealing with cancer, so just, give them some THC, high THC strain with some CBD. But what you're saying is really important, that the plant actually has over 100 cannabinoids and terpenes it can have. And so the combination of, again, CBG and CBN and all the different cannabinoids can have specific effects. I have a colleague in the field who works with stage 3, stage 4 patients with stage 3, stage 4. And one of the protocols that have been really working for her is actually an oil derived from 6 different strains of cannabis. And again, the multitude and the combination of these different strains working together. And another piece that you talked about, which is really important within the medical field, is standardization and understanding dose, that there can be consistency in what is being given to individuals. And yeah, that's a very exciting part too. And at the same time, although it's exciting, I love that you said that it's an agricultural, it's a plant. And so the humans cannot always understand and break down everything. And there's always going to be differences. And it's really based on the relationship between the plant and the person, and for them to really curate that empowerment of understanding their own body and the dose that they're taking.
Yeah, I think it's also very important, but every patient that come to get medicinal cannabis, at least in Israel, I don't know how it's in other places, is being instructed to start really slowly and to find the working dose that really works, because the cannabinoids are known to have some strange bell-shaped effect, which means that for most of drugs, you can really draw the line like the more the better, and the only thing that stops us is the toxic concentration. So we say, okay, we take the concentration of the drug, which is surely not toxic, but working. But we know that if you take more of the drug, it will work better, just we'll get into the side effects. For cannabinoids, it is not always like that. For cannabinoids, there is some like curve, like bell shape. So you have the optimal effect, which works the best. And maybe if you take more, it works worse. So really, it's really personalized. So really, everyone have to find his dose. And it's nice that when they do clinical trials, somehow they manage to work with the same dose or close doses for all the patients in the treatment group and still have results. But I know that in real life, not in clinical trial, every patient finds his working dose, which works the best for him. And also, of course, playing with the different strains from different growers and finding the one that really works the best.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's really so interesting that, yeah, it's not always more is better with cannabis. There's a working dose, as you're mentioning, that's very specific to the person. And so the person actually engages with their medical professionals and with their doctor and their grower to see what works optimally for them. And so, with that being said, let's talk a little bit about toxicity levels. Cannabis is known to be one of the safest medicines to take. It doesn't have a high threshold for dangerous amounts. Can you share a little bit more about maybe the adverse effects of cannabis?
I think that here we will really need to divide between CBD-rich strains and THC-rich strains because the side effects are different. With CBD-rich strains, very many studies write in the papers something like, we couldn't even find the dose which has any side effects or because CBD is really not toxic, maybe some dizziness or some a bit gut problems, but CBD really is not toxic. But if you talk about THC-rich strains, we really can get into side effects of psychosis and palpitations. It is much more dangerous. We have to be much more cautious when we treat with these strains. And that's why I usually much more prefer strains which have half and half CBD and THC, even for patients who think they need THC for treatment, because I now see from the clinical trials that right at the beginning you say CBD is anti-epileptic and anti-inflammatory, but it's not only that. Now I see in the clinical trials that almost everything THC knows to do, at some level CBD also knows to do, because there are studies on mood and anxiety, depression, and the effects that we always thought that they are THC's effects, they are not CBD's effects, but we see now in clinical trials on CBD-rich herbs or even pure CBD that it also is able to do that. So, and it counteracts some of THC side effects. So I really much more like strains which contain also CBD, even if we want THC's effects on pain reduction and nausea. By the way, CBD also can do pain reduction and nausea, but I would say take strain which has also CBD, not only THC. Start slowly, and then you are quite protected from side effects.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for that. I understand that the 1-to-1 ratio, where it's half CBD, half THC, or 2-to-1 ratios work quite well, because as you're saying, CBD actually diminishes some of the psychoactive effects of THC. And if someone is taking it because high doses of THC for cancer or pain, as you're mentioning, then they're able to, calm some of the psychoactive paranoia, maybe potentially this like a bit of dissociation and things like that people can experience. It can actually diminish it, and there's new that they're saying there's new evidence that CBD can do a lot of the things that THC can do, and it's exciting to see what that research proves.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I once set to combine a lecture on CBD clinical trials, and I saw it really, whoa, from the last like 2-3 years, from 2018 till now, there are at least 20 clinical trials that you read them and said, whoa, CBD really can do it? Cool. So CBD doesn't stop to do incredible things. Every time another one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because if you even read surveys of cannabis use, and now also surveys of CBD rich strains use, and you see that people take them for all the diseases that we thought originally that they should take THC rich preparations for pain and mood disorders and nausea and sleep disorders, and everything that you would expect it not work without THC, but it does.
Exactly. And again, this is the way that the plant is in nature. It's not just isolated within a plant that it would just have yes, of course, it can have very high amounts of THC, but the other cannabinoids are still present. And being able to work with it in that balanced way is very exciting. Let's switch course a little bit and talk about what illnesses are treated. You, of course, talked about THC for pain, for nausea, especially when people are actually going through cancer treatment and they need to be supported with appetite so that they don't lose so much of their weight, that they're able to sleep during this time. And so talk a little bit more about maybe autoimmune situations, MS, we touched upon cancer. Where have you seen the most benefits and effects for specific illnesses?
Well, you mentioned it that CBD works so great for epilepsy, for different kinds of epilepsy, especially in children, and it's now some common knowledge that like everyone wants CBD for epilepsy, and CBD, if I talk about CBD, I hardly could think about any kind of inflammation that it will be unable to treat. Really, it's so nice anti-inflammatory. Why do I say nice? Because if you put it in the experiment with mice and I have to put positive control of some steroid like dexamethasone, CBD looks miserable near it because dexamethasone works so strong. But when you think about chronic use and you think that people get into really bad side effects if they take steroids for a long time, and CBD they can take for a really, really long time. So this moderate effect for a long time is much more important, I think, than some really strong effect, but that you can't take it more than 2 weeks. So I see that people take CBD-rich strains for back pains and arthritis, and all these indications that they take it for years because it's not something that disappears. And if I think about THC, what you haven't said about THC, maybe only PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder. I know that people use THC-rich strains for that, but many indications. If I think about the most popular indications, it's really nausea and pains and inflammation, sleep, appetite, mood disorders, everything, anxiety, depression, every kind of stress. And again, it's really exciting that now most of it, you have real clinical trials that prove it. It's not only someone who says, it makes me feel good. Everything is measured and everything is like with standardized scores of sleep quality and life quality and appetite and pain and everything.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the anecdotal cases that have been, over so many decades of individuals is now being backed up by science, and cannabis is now again having its being in the forefront of the medical industry. And yeah, I appreciate what you said about its CBD, especially as the anti-inflammatory, because individuals can take it for a prolonged amount of time without adverse effects on their body, like a steroid would have, or a very strong anti-inflammatory medication would have. And especially, yeah, you talked about mood disorders. So this is the interesting one, because as a therapist, when I work with different individuals who are introducing just CBD for their anxiety, or actually increasing, a high THC strain for their mood elevation, things like that. And they, especially if they're new to cannabis, they sometimes say, well, I'm experiencing the munchies, or I'm experiencing psychoactive tendencies, I'm having paranoia. And so I, as a therapist, always say that the plant is actually, it's still a spirit plant, and it's a master plant, just like ayahuasca, just like psilocybin, just like San Pedro. And it's oftentimes bringing up what's inside the person as well. And so it's the paranoia, I oftentimes say, is maybe there's something inside of them that they're feeling anxious about that they haven't looked at. How are they experiencing their reality? How are they dealing with stress in their life? These are sometimes things that are pushed down, and people don't look at it, and the medicines oftentimes bring it to the surface. So I'm wondering about even your own perspective on holistic care with cannabis. Within your scientific community, what are some of the communications around what is the best way and the best package to be supported by a medicine such as cannabis?
You know, actually, it's interesting because cannabis now is in some very strange and interesting position. It's not really a medicine. I mean, like regular medicines, but it's much more than most of medicinal herbs. From all the, of course, it happened because of the psychoactivity of the THC. All that heavy regulation happened because of its shadowed compound and so on. But you see that no medicinal herb is regulated this way. I mean, the government can say about some medicinal herbs. For example, I don't know how it's in Canada, but in Israel there is a list of medicinal herbs which are prohibited, just prohibited. I don't know what convallaria or ephedra or whatever, which is in the prohibited list. You cannot find it, you cannot buy it, you cannot treat with it, even if you're a herbal therapist. But if it's in the allowed list, you will find it in any pharmacy with almost no, not almost, with no regulation. With if the producer wants to be really to qualitative, he will write like contains 5%. I don't know what ginseng weeds. And you will say, oh, really, thank you so much, because most of the producer will just write you a hinacea, and you will not know if it contains it at all. And if it contains it, maybe it's just grounded, I don't know what, stems, or you see, it's so cannabis regulation is much more strict. And that's why it's less in the holistic treatments. It's more in like regular doctor's treatments. You also have to be not only a doctor, but not every doctor can prescribe cannabis. There is a list of, let's say you have, you know, one has some neurological problem that he thinks he needs cannabis, so he looks up at the list of neurologists which are allowed to prescribe cannabis, and then he goes to that neurologist and does all the blood tests and the EEG and the MRI, whatever he has to do for his brain, and then neurologist prescribes him cannabis. So it's much more like a drug, like a official medicine, and not as a holistic treatment. Any holistic therapists and herbalists and naturopaths and all these guys aren't even allowed to prescribe medicinal cannabis. So it falls into the category of much more like an official medicine that you go to the pharmacy and with your recipe and you get it there.
Yeah, exactly. Cannabis is really sitting on that brink of the medical, but really it is a herb, and it should, you know, be understood for the benefits that it brings in that way. And same, you know, in Canada, the College of Naturopathic Medicines really fought for this and fought to be able to have the chance to diagnose and also prescribe cannabis as a medicine in combination with other plant medicines such as ashwagandha, such as turmeric, to be able to support the anti-inflammatory and calming states of the body. And so I think it's really the next frontier for cannabis to be seen as a mixture of these two worlds. And again, with my clients, I always tell them, are you seeing a therapist while you're working with this medicine? Are you looking at the root causes of your illness and why it is that you have, why you have these experiences? How is your diet? Are you eating an alkaline diet? Are you, especially for cancer patients, really understanding that the water and food intake is so important? You can't be eating, continuously high oil, high sugar meals and then expect your inflammation to just be reduced by CBD. It's a whole, process to shift the body.
But
And
that's what the patients want, don't they? Most of them want just to continue eating hamburger and be CBD and feel good.
yes, I think some people are still on that place where they see it as like another pill just to deal with the symptoms, the symptoms that they're dealing with their body. But yes, it takes courage and it takes determination and true change to be able to live in a healthy body. But right now, there are many people on a different spectrum, and cannabis is still helping. It's still helping them.
But you know what? I think it will be even better. At the end, it will be even better because also regular official doctors will prescribe it. And I think that it will have to be some sort of, I'm glad to hear that in Canada, naturopaths already can prescribe it, and probably with CBD rich products, it will be easier.
Yeah, exactly.
I just think that the governments are afraid of THC rich products because of the psychoactivity.
Yes. Yeah, exactly, exactly. And naturopaths, yeah, this is the thing. Even in Canada, CBD has to be prescribed. It's not like other states that have legalized cannabis, where, I love visiting states like Washington and Oregon and California, because you can actually go into a regular drugstore and there's a cabinet that's specifically for CBD products. And in Canada, even though we have legalized on a federal level, CBD is still not readily available like this. Are still quite tight on who has the ability to diagnose and to share the medicine that way. So it's still an ongoing effort, and even for the personal growing of the medicine, to be able to grow it your own and be able to cultivate and to visit different facilities where the strains are made. So, we're still working on those regulations.
Because, in Israel, you cannot grow by yourself. Mm-hmm. It's regulated. You can go, if you have a recipe from your doctor, you can go and buy it, but you cannot grow.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, probably if they catch you and you are really ill, probably it will be still okay, but officially you cannot do that. No permission to do it.
Right. And again, that surprises me, because Israel is on the front line of the research, and that the access for people to be able to have it like an agricultural plant, like a tomato or a carrot in their garden. In Canada, people are able to grow 4 plants now, but if they have a medical license that opened up in 2001, then they're able to have more plants based on the diagnosis that they have received from the doctor. And so it's really interesting how different countries still have different regulations. We haven't had a unified voice that way with cannabis, and yeah, it's still ongoing, but at least there's major milestones. Dr. Kogan,
I think that
yes, sorry. Go ahead. I know this is an interesting part of it.
I know that many people are really frustrated about this really strict regulation, and I also hear things that I say, oh my gosh, why are they doing that? But sometimes it really protects the patient, because I saw before the strict regulations that there were growers who really checked the amounts of CBD and THC, and just destroyed the batches where there's not enough of them and so on. But there were also growers who grew what grows and haven't even checked. So patients, it was every time they didn't know what will they get. they could get a really very nicely working product, and the next batch would not work at all. So sometimes that strict regulation is needed. I suppose that you see that also with medicinal herbs, right? You know from where you want your ashwagandha. You will not take it from everyone, because you know that there are producers that you can rely on them and say that it really will be a good product, and there are producers that you don't know what you will find inside.
Yeah, exactly.
So for one who is not familiar, maybe it's better that it's regulated strictly, and so now anyone who goes to the pharmacy will get his T1 C28 and know that it really is there. It's not just written, it's really
Yeah.
analyzed. And
Yes, exactly. I think the lab testing and understanding like the toxicity of herbicides and pesticides on the plants is very important. And at the same time, because this plant is so lucrative, brings in so much money for the government. Unfortunately, in Canada, the major companies who have the power to be able to grow the medicine right now are just as guilty of creating medicine that's being radiated or highly with high cases of pesticides in it. And so I really think the regulations need to, and third party testing or individual testing needs to be set out so that people have a chance to be able to not only ask for it, but be able to do their own testing with the medicine. But I agree with you. I think there's a balance between that regulation from the government and also empowering people to know their own medicine, to go and visit with the growers, to really understand the soil that the plant is being grown in, and what kind of the microbiome of the soil and the mycelium of the soil, and really the whole plant system and the water. So I personally know that when I connect people to get the medicine, I still at times go to micro growers, small growers, and get them to really go and visit with the person and see the site if they're able to. I can see some questions coming in. This is the fascinating part of the conversation as well, because the prohibition and all the laws. So I look forward to speaking with you more on it. And we have a question from the audience saying that they want to circle it back to cannabis and appetite. Again, on the molecular level, please share with us what is happening in the body where the increase of the appetite is happening. Does it have something to do with the organs, with the CB2 receptors again, or?
No, it's CB1 receptors. It's the same CB1 receptors that are involved in high and in pain and like pain reduction. They stimulate our appetite, and again, it's THC's effect. So CBD-rich preparations will not do that, and on the contrary, CBD was shown in some experiments to downregulate the appetite and downregulate the craving for sweet food or stuff like that. So again, use 1-to-1 strains. But yes, the THC-rich strains will elevate an appetite. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes you're looking for it for some cancer patients, so AIDS patients who hardly eat at all. So you want them to eat at least anything. Or even, elderly patients who are also whose appetite is very loose, and they can spend the whole day without eating anything. So it's really good that it improves the appetite.
Excellent, thank you.
But it's not at the organ level; it's at the brain level. Like it makes us feel hungry, not at the stomach level, let's say. So it's through CB1 receptors and at the brain level.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification. I want to ask this potentially final question for you. Contraindications. this is a really important one. So let's say if a patient of yours is on SSRIs or anxiolytics, how do you balance that out with someone who has to take high THC or 1-to-1 ratio for nausea, for example, for cancer treatment and their depression?
I think that the whole point is to start slowly, because I saw case reports of patients who were treated by SSRIs and morphines and anti-inflammatory drugs and whatever, and they can't, while they start slowly and elevate slowly, they can just lower the doses of the drugs they take most of the times. And also, usually right when someone has high blood pressure, for example, at the beginning when he is diagnosed with high blood pressure, he measures his blood pressure every day, and he's really like, a bit anxious about it, treats it really. After some 2, 3, 4 months, he hardly ever measures his blood pressure. He does it maybe once a month if he's a good boy. But if you start treatment with cannabinoids, you really need to measure your blood pressure, measure your sugar levels, and so on. Everyone with his illnesses, with his background. So then patients are able to reduce their other medications gradually, like slowly, gradually, while they're elevating cannabis to reduce other medications. And as for their precautions, I think that it's quite a common knowledge that pregnant women shouldn't use cannabis. And THC-rich strains, I don't think that ever anyone made a research on CBD-rich strains in pregnant women, but I wouldn't use it either, because if it's untested, it could be possibly dangerous, and that's like, why to endanger yourself and the baby. And for THC-rich strains, people with kidney insufficiency have to map it very carefully, because THC is known to sometimes worsen the kidney state, so it has to be checked, carefully checked. That's all I can think about. And also for THC, if someone tends to some psychotic attacks, he'd better not use THC, but CBD.
Perfect.
I think that's it. That's all I can think about.
Wonderful. Yeah, great. It's wonderful, as you said, to start slow and elevate in a very mindful way, as the body's adjusting and then reducing the other prescription drugs or even opioids that many people are on, to slowly taper off that way. Dr. Kogan, last question for you. This has been such a wonderful conversation. And the last question that we have is, what is your hope for the future in terms of cannabis and other illegal and stigmatized substances in psychedelics? What do you hope to see happen?
I hope to see more research. I hope to see all these herbs just researched, because it's somewhat strange situation that some 100 years ago, all of them were freely used, and sometimes maybe got people to toxic side effects and whatever, like were too freely used. And then it was a total freeze, and they were not used at all. So there should be a good way in the middle somewhere. I think that we have started it with cannabis, but all the psychedelics, if a specific molecule works. And if you find a concentration where it gives a therapeutic effect and is still without side effects. So, because let's divide the recreational use for a second and medicinal use. I think that this is the biggest problem of these herbs, the recreational use. That's what scares all the governments, that the governments think that people will use it mostly recreational. So the more we will do research on it, the more we will find the doses and the molecules inside the herbs that do not produce psychoactive effects. That you don't want, I think no one really wants to take a medicine which cause hallucinations or whatever, because even someone who does want to take such a herb in his weekend, still he wants to wake up, take his medicine and go to work without feeling his back pain or whatever, and be in clear mind without any side effects, which could be nice and someone could look for them at some different situation, but not in the regular working day. So the more we do such research, such clinical trials, and prove that these herbs can work without yet bringing side effects, the more people will see it and believe it and want to use it. And the more, the Ministry of Health will see it and say, okay, but these concentrations are really not psychoactive, so why not use it? And so on. It happens with cannabis, that's what happens. So it can happen also with other herbs.
Yeah, exactly.
What I wanted to say about cannabis, I forgot to say it, and I think it is important. Most of people were at the beginning were just smoking it or vaporizing it, and now it is mostly sold in oil. For example, in Israel, it is sold in oil, and it's a bit dangerous point, because if someone swallows an oil, it doesn't work immediately. So this is the way to get into side effects, because if someone vaporizes, he takes a puff, and after 3 minutes the pain is gone, so he feels great and he doesn't take another one. But if he takes the oil, he swallows the oil, nothing happens, like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, nothing happens, so he takes more. And then after some 2 hours, he can have crazy side effects. So just for people who use oil formulations, they have to be patient and to know that maybe for the first time it will not help at all, that they will take like 10 drops and see no effect. And tomorrow they will take 20 drops. Or the third day they will take 30 drops, but not to take more when you see that it doesn't work after half an hour, because then it will work after 2 hours, 3 hours. It depends on digestion on everyone. It depends on what everyone ate together with his preparation. If he ate anything, if he ate something fat, it will be absorbed faster. If not, it will be absorbed really after some 3 hours, and then he will get really side effects. So especially with the oral formulation, take it even more slowly than vaporization or smoking.
Yeah, exactly. Such a good point around intake for cannabis, because absolutely, when it's an edible or an oil form, the body's going to metabolize it differently. They could actually be increasing their dose to a high level that they're not ready for. And whether it's suppositories, where it's definitely way less psychoactive, or actually, inhaling the medicine, these things have to be talked about. And I appreciate what you're saying about the medical container as well as the shamanic container or the like therapeutic container. There has to be a container for these plants, and especially for the psychedelics, entheogen psychedelics. There has to be a container for support, circle of care, so people are not alone in it. I know with the resurgence that's happening right now, we, especially at the Canadian Psychedelic Association, this is the big dialogue. How do we ensure that people are using the medicine in a safe way, and in a way that's actually supportive to what their intention is, and not just because they want to escape or because they just want to get, high over and over again, but really with true intention, with support, and with a lot of knowledge and research. So thank you so much to you, to Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Lamia Hanous, to William Devane, all of your team in this tireless effort to continue this research and to really make a mark for cannabis studies and innovation in this field.
Thanks, Salmek. It was really nice to talk to you about all that.
Thank you so much. And as we, so please stay on with us, Dr. Kogan, and I will bring our conversation to a close. So again, thank you so much to the team of the World Psychedelic Day Summit. We are so grateful for this information, especially because it's given free to the public to increase awareness, to increase advocacy for these incredible plants that are helping us so much on our evolution. I would like to specifically thank Kathleen Carter as well as Shannon Smedella for their coordination, especially Kathleen, who has helped so much to bring these panels together and do the research and the curation of the questions. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of passion to be able to do this and gift the community. So thank you so much, Kathleen. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you to the sponsors who have supported this event, as well as Marigolds, the PR company, who is again helping to get these videos into the greater outreach, so that more and more people will be notified and educated. If you would like to watch this interview again, please go to the World Psychedelics Day website, and you can find further info on how to access them. And again, thank you so much to Dr. Kogan for joining us. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to connecting with you soon and continuing this conversation. Yes, and final thank you to Dr. Mitchell, who joined us prior to this conversation, and for sharing his wisdom, and again, continuing to work even at the age of 90. What a gift you are to our cannabis community and beyond. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell.